Hello again, everybody. My name is Jay Clark, and I'm a senior iOS engineer here at RightPoint. My talk is called Finding the Implicit Design. Really quickly, my credentials. For my 3.5 years at RightPoint, I've built 10 apps, and I've worked with 15 designers. Yes, I did count. As a disclaimer, before I get into this, I love designers. Having built products in RightPoint's design-focused manner, I'm never going to go back. A great designer adds so much value to a product. I love designers, but I don't really know how they work. Consider my friend Dave. So this is my best guess of how Dave's brain works. You show him a picture, his juju tells him if it works or not, he fiddles, repeats. So I want to dig into this black box a little bit. Designers, by their nature, they think and work at a high level. They talk about things like feel and intuition and mood and user journeys and stuff like that. And developers, on the other hand, we think and operate at a very low level. We are the ones responsible for telling the code to do exactly what it's supposed to do in every single scenario. So there's a little bit of a gap here, and what I want to talk about today is finding the implicit rules that make up what the designer actually means, or how this black box actually works. So by poking and prodding and exercising a designer's choices, we can reveal the secret rules that are actually governing their designs. So I'd like to give you a super simple example that everybody should be familiar with. Onboarding, it's a feature that has been literally in every app that I've ever made. You know onboarding, it's a sequence of screens that establishes the brand and the product identity, and everybody swipes through it and doesn't read it. So super simple, right? Just give it to the intern. No, wrong. I'm here to tell you that onboarding is always sneakily one of the hardest layouts we have to implement in an app, and I'm going to explain why. So I get my designs from Dave. He's popped them into Zeppelin for me so I can inspect how far everything is away from each other, and I get building. So I'm going to use a UI page view controller that'll handle the scrolling and the paging dots for me. And I'm going to make a view controller class to house the contents of a single page. So first I'm going to put our background image view in there and pin it to the edges. Then I'm going to add our buttons from the bottom using the spacing in the comp. The paging dots is handled for me by the page view controller, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'll pin the rest of the content of fixed distance above our buttons. So great, let's show Dave and see what he thinks. Oh shoot, our paging dots are actually at the bottom of the screen, but that should be an easy fix. So let's just scroll to the next page. And let's ask Dave what he thinks. He says the buttons shouldn't scroll because they are in both the first page and the second page. That makes sense. So maybe the buttons just need to stay there. So let's get back to the drawing board. So we'll actually move our buttons out of the onboarding page and into the page view controller. And then we'll just bump up our paging dots. Oh, no, we can't do that. UI page view controller doesn't let you move the dots. So that's annoying. So we'll just make another container instead, and we'll move the buttons over there, and we'll just shorten up our page view controller so the dots move up, because the dots always stay at the bottom of page view controller. That's cool. Okay, let's show Dave. Okay, so now our background view is clipped, but our dots are in the same spot. So why did that happen? Oh, because they're getting clipped by the bottom of the page view controller that we brought up a little bit. Okay, so let's just kill the page view controller. It's gone. And let's just add our scroll view and the paging dots manually, because that's all the useless abstraction offers us anyway. Okay, and now we're back to Dave. So awesome. This looks great. And then Dave tells me that he has new copy from the client for page 2. Okay, let's see what the new copy looks like. Oh, no. Okay, so that's really long. Okay, so back to the code. So this is a problem because we have no way to communicate that the icon is about to run into our button, because they're not siblings of each other. They're in different classes. So maybe I can just look over at the comp and I can figure out exactly how tall the buttons are, and I can pop in some greater than or equal to constraint, but that feels wrong, right? Let's get rid of that, because we know that with different users and different text sizes on their phones, that there's no guarantee that that number is going to be a constant. So instead, we'll just expose a layout guide in our container, and as views are added into the hierarchy, we'll just let them know where the layout guide is, and they can talk to the guide. Okay, back to Dave. This is looking good. And it's looking so good that I'm going to show it to Dave on the new iPhone Super Tall. Let's see what Dave thinks. Oh, Dave actually meant for the copy to be anchored to the top of the screen, not just as low as it can be. So that's easy enough. Let's go back to the code. We'll do a firm constraint to the top, and we'll flex the bottom. That's easy. Back to Dave. I think he has a new message for me. Okay, he has a new title copy from the client for page 2. Okay, so let's scroll over and see page 2. Oh, it now flexes to 2 lines. And let's see how he feels about my solution. And Dave is actually saying that the baselines of the titles are supposed to be aligned instead of the tops, and the tops of the subtitles are supposed to be aligned. All right, so back to the drawing board. So he's saying that if any of my end pages have a title that wraps to a second line, which I won't know at compile time, I will only know once it's rendered, that I need to tell all of my titles to grow upwards. And so that means I'm going to have to expose another layout guide and manually constrain all my labels to it. But then that brings up the question, what is this distance that this layout guide is supposed to be sitting from the top of the screen? And instead of continuing to walk through this anymore, I think you guys get the point. I've found over my years here that these things can get crazy complicated if you dive in head first and ask questions later. So I'm going to tell you the implicit rules that I've teased out of Dave over the years for this specific onboarding layout. So we learned that the buttons are anchored to the bottom and they don't scroll. The background image is full screen. The title baselines should be aligned. The title should be at least 20 pixels from the top. You gotta watch out for that one, because if they get 3 lines and they hit the top, then you're overflowing off the top. This one is exciting. This is one that took me a while to figure out, is that designers often will just anchor things to some ratio of the screen. It's like this title is around the top fourth of the screen. Keep it there regardless of how big or small we go, and try to do that. And then the rest of these rules eventually just talk about what needs to truncate first, order of operations there. So back to Dave. The best way to find out these implicit rules are to just ask a bunch of questions before you dive in. And here are some of my favorites, which is, how would this look on a super small screen? How would this look on a super tall screen? What happens if the font size gets jacked up super high? What happens if something goes wrong? What happens if everything goes wrong? And a bunch of other questions. So if you ask your designer to exercise their designs and maybe explore some more opportunities to be more explicit about their implicit rules, then I think you'll find that you can uncover the implicit design. Thank you.